There is some good news, or at least I see it as good news, in the injury update status of Caitlyn Clark. So, if you are not living under a rock, you are very well aware that Caitlyn Clark walked off the court last night in the final 30 seconds of the game, holding her groin, visually upset. It was a heartbreaking moment. I was at a loss for words. I know how much this means to her. I know how much this means to her going into All-Star weekend. I know how much this means to the league and to the success of so many things. And there has been an injury status update that the Indiana Fever posted to their social media. As for tonight's game, the Indiana Fever are playing in New York, my town, and I will be at the game, and she is listed as questionable for the game. She was scheduled for an MRI today, and so I am assuming that the results from the MRI were not as significant as a lot of people, myself included, thought that they might be. While I'm not an authority on the subject, like whether a strain actually shows up on an MRI, to be completely honest, disclaimer, I'm not a doctor, though I did date one for a year and a half. Just the mere fact that she was not ruled out for tonight's game does seem like a light at the end of the tunnel. That being said, ever since she has stepped back on that court 5 games ago, she has not looked like herself. Her shot is not falling as well. I would actually say it's more like her 3-point shot is not falling. But Caitlyn is also missing some layups, and she is just not performing like herself. In no world do I see Caitlyn Clark as being washed or going through a sophomore slump. I see the causation of her coming back from injury and being out for half the season as being completely responsible for her performance. I'm of the opinion there must have been so much pressure for Caitlyn to return to the court, to return to her team, who I wouldn't say that they were struggling in those last few games. I think that they are just a team that really wanted and needed their offensive engine back. I think Caitlyn Clark and the Indiana Fever feel a certain responsibility to the fan base, to the league, to the rising tide that she is as a player in the WNBA, but maybe it was too soon. I also think in the second pregame that the Indiana Fever played, when they played in Iowa, I personally think that Caitlyn Clark was pushing through an injury. Although she put down like a spectacular performance, I don't think that there was a world in which Caitlyn Clark would let herself not play at Carver Hawkeye Arena. I think Caitlyn puts an immense pressure on herself to deliver for her fans. You can just see it by the way she always takes the time to sign autographs. You can see it by the way she's always thanking fans and the way that she just treats her home arena, talks about how much she loves the fans. So I really do think that the professionals around her, the medical staff around her, really need to kind of step in and make sure she's not saying, hey, I want to play, when she's really not able to play. Because a competitive player never wants to be sitting there on the bench. They want to be out there. They want to be giving it their all. They want to play. But the WNBA is very abstract about the information they give about injuries. So questionable, I'm not reading too much into this. I do see this as better than the ruled out status, I have to say, but I could also see this questionable status as lingering. And I am really on the fence as to whether or not she is going to play an All-Star weekend. I guarantee you Caitlyn wants to do this. I think she pushed through the Carver Hawkeye Arena pregame, and I think the weight of the All-Star game and how significant it is to Caitlyn Clark, if it were up to her, she would probably play. Though I am hoping that Caitlyn Clark is kind of adjusting to what her body does and doesn't want to do. And I am hoping that she does have the people around her to kind of really, really understand what is going on in her body and to sit her if she needs to. I kind of think she might need to, as much as I would love to see her take part in it. There are some things that we need to address, though, that have been happening in this season more than most other seasons, at least the seasons that I've watched, because I was not watching the WNBA back in the 90s. But in the seasons that I've watched, I have noticed a significant uptick in injuries. I noticed that at the end of May, I actually made a video on this, that the uptick in injuries increased 138% from previous seasons. I think that this is because the excess physicality. Stephanie White, in her post-game interview, mentioned the physicality is a lot more this season than it is in seasons that she's ever been a part of. I think it is the officiating allowing the excess physicality to go unchecked. And I think Kathy Engelbert has to sit at a round table with the heads of all the referee committee or whoever it is and legitimately put down the hammer. Because just yesterday, this was the injury status update. That is a significant number of players. Remember, there are only 144 players in the league. This is a percentage of that. I also think the condensed schedule of 44 games without expanding the time that the players have to play is a big issue. I think the roster size is also a big issue. I was just speaking last week to a sports medical professional who had also noted that she does not think that the 2 to 3 games on average per week that the WNBA play is conducive to enough healing time for injuries. And let me explain this. After I had this enlightening conversation with the clinician and sports orthopedic surgeon, she had noted that in order to prevent injury, you need to make sure that you're maintaining all the muscles around your joints. When you're getting into these condensed schedules, when you're playing all these games a week, you're not having time to rest. You're not having time to do the cross training or support training that you might need to normally do in between games. Because if you think about it, a team plays 2 to 3 games a week. Around those days, they also have practice. And then so you kind of only get 1 day to rest. And in addition to resting, you do also need to be cross training, like making sure you're maintaining your core, making sure you're maintaining your lateral stabilizers, where you are using them when you're playing a game, but you aren't necessarily working them out in the same way every day. You need all these other core muscles, like all these other stabilizing muscles, like glutes or rotators, and these muscles that you need to like run and jump and have control when you land per se, which helps in a lot of injury prevention, especially for knees in women. This is a much bigger conversation. I don't know if this is something that might come up in the CBA negotiations that the players are currently in with the league, a CBA negotiation of which Caitlyn Clark is set to take place in on Thursday. She is stepping in like Michael Jordan did for the NBA, although Michael Jordan was much more established in the NBA than Caitlyn Clark is in her second season in the WNBA. But it sounds like the players just were not happy with what the league put down on the table, and they brought in Caitlyn Clark because Caitlyn Clark's impact on the league is so significant that it might be that the other end of the table will actually sit down and listen. And I tell you what, if I'm Caitlyn Clark, I am walking into that CBA meeting and I am talking about the referees. I'm talking about the officiating. I mean, she threatened to call the league on the referee last night for something he must have said that was crazy, because there was a conversation between her and one of the refs that seemed to be starting out pretty civil. She was just nodding her head and being like, yeah, okay. All of a sudden, he says something, his back is turned. We don't know what he said, but it must have been something. And Caitlyn Clark did not receive a tech for her reaction. So I'm assuming that whatever he said was probably out of pocket. It was a statement that she felt so bold as to tell him that she could call the league about, but I don't know. I'm telling you, whatever he said must have been a big deal, because no, she did not receive a tech after she had mentioned calling the league on him. There is an element of the physicalities that I would let go. I think it has gone way beyond that this season. I think the injury lists have shown that. I think allowing the amount of physicality like directed towards Caitlyn Clark going unchecked is not sustainable for the league. It is not sustainable for all of the other players. And they know that they can get away with it. They know. Natalie Nakase has mentioned it. Steph White mentioned it in the post-game interview last night, that they just allow more physicality to go towards Caitlyn Clark. But I don't think viewers want to see this. While I don't know if it's that the WNBA or the commissioner might think that women being physical is kind of like a spectacle that people might want to tune into, and the chippiness on the court is like, you know, a reality TV show element of drama that like raises viewership. But I did get a comment in my video yesterday that stuck out to me, and I will not read who it's from because I want to keep this person anonymous, but they said the WNBA has yet to learn what the NBA did when they stopped the physical play to focus more on advanced scoring. Former Commissioner David Stern was said to aggressively push that due to the Bulls' 75-68 victory over the Miami Heat in Game 2 of the 1997 Eastern Conference Finals. It made for bad television because the majority overwhelmingly prefers high-scoring games. And I can attest that whenever there is a phenomenal game with a phenomenal performance, my viewership of articles, my viewership of videos is significantly higher. And when there are negative elements that happen in the game, a lot of people comment because it is something that really gets to them. And I appreciate all of you guys for all of your insights. It really does help me understand what people in other parts of the country and other parts of the world are feeling. And I can actually apply that to my takes. I can apply that to the way that I view the WNBA. I can apply that to exterior ways of seeing something other than my own bias. So keep them coming. Hop down in the comments and let me know what you think.